record of a death. Since he, Hojo Tamio, fell ill with a stomach ailment at the end of September 1937 and was admitted to the critical ward for the second time this year, he had been in a dangerous condition, but I never thought he would die so soon. It was about 20 days before his death that his attending physician told me Mr. Hojo may never be able to stand again. It was only then that I was startled to realize how serious his condition was, so oblivious had I been in my contact with him. I had believed that while it would be difficult for him to last until the coming spring, he would at least make it through the new year. He had been living his days with that much vigor. He, too, must not have thought that death would visit him so soon. However, he seemed to have been aware that his end was approaching, as he wrote in his diary around that time. The cause of this illness, when I get to the bottom of it, is of my own making. Resign yourself, my heart. But to be this thin is somehow eerie. I suddenly feel as if I might die just like this in my hospital room. And after many days of serious illness, he wrote of his anguish. I think about it deeply. I am possessed by a terrible illness. I want to wail. I want to cry and scream. What can I do with this heart? That period seems to have been the most painful for him, and his struggle with death also appeared to be at its most intense. He once said to me with a sorrowful look, "I don't want to die yet. There's something I absolutely have to write. I want to recover one more time." He died of intestinal tuberculosis. Until his very last moment, his consciousness was pitifully clear. Although he was literally skin and bones, he was quite energetic, even walking to the toilet by himself until just before his death. His perseverance and the strength of his will were astonishing. Nevertheless, 3 or 4 days before he died, he seemed to be in pain even when getting up or turning over in bed. When I held him up, he seemed relieved and said happily, "It helps when you do that." Because the bed was crude and narrow, his emaciated back was in a bad way, and to make matters worse, the futon would hang down on both sides, and its weight seemed to be very painful for his weary body. He would often cough painfully and say, "The futon is so heavy." When I offered to hang the futon for him, he suddenly became sullen and said angrily, "Leave it alone, you. This is a charity hospital, and I'm a charity patient. I have to endure as much as I can. Besides, hanging the futon makes it look like I'm a seriously ill patient, and I don't like that." As he was usually completely selfish and undisciplined, I was often taken aback at such times, unexpectedly touching upon his true nature. Day after day, he had only a small amount of rice water and milk, and sometimes he drank it, sometimes he didn't, so his body grew weaker by the day. There was nothing else for him to eat. If he tried to eat even a little bit of anything other than liquids, he would immediately feel severe pain and seem to get diarrhea. He often said, "I don't need anything right now. I just want to eat 2 bowls of barley rice. I want to be able to do that." He barely touched the gifts sent by Mr. Kobayashi from Sojinsha. However, he had said, "I'm going to use this for my recovery celebration," and had me store them away. Sadly, those items became the lonely refreshments for the people of the dormitory and us, his friends, on the night of the wake. He also had a habit of saying, "When I get better this time, I'll work as an attendant for a while. That's really good for the body. You have to exercise." Health first, writing novels comes after that, and he would make various plans for when he got better. At such times, he seemed to be eagerly awaiting the day of his recovery, and he also seemed to believe that he would definitely recover. He seemed to want to write novels quite a bit. He would say, "You, write for me," or sometimes cough sadly and say, I want to write a novel." As he lay there quietly, various thoughts must have been welling up like clouds. He once said with conviction, "I was just thinking of something wonderful. It's a theme for a novel that no one in the history of world literature has ever thought of or written about." He seemed to have tried most things that were said to be good for his illness, but they didn't seem to have much effect. Sometimes, when someone would teach him a strange remedy, he would say head-on, "That's not worth a damn. I've tried everything that's supposed to be good, this and that, but it only made me worse." In the end, a sick person has no choice but to entrust their life to the doctor, and would snap at them. 2 or 3 days before he died, His mind became much calmer, and he seemed to be playing in a lofty world that I could not fathom. I'm not afraid of death. I'm ready. My only regret is leaving behind what I have to write. But maybe that's just a complaint, he said around that time. His figure, lying quietly on his back with his deep-set eyes focused on something, and a dark shadow on his gaunt cheeks, made me feel something pitiful and a strange, clear power. I would sometimes peer into his face and ask, "What are you thinking about now?" And he would answer, "I'm not thinking about anything." When I asked if I should read something to him, he would say, "No, I don't want to hear anything." He probably didn't want his peaceful feeling to be disturbed. The day before he died, I asked the doctor to clear the bed next to his. It was so that I could stay the night and help him with things. When I told him, "I'll be sleeping here from tonight," he just said, "Oh, I'm sorry." Then he lay quietly on his back again. When an auxiliary bed is brought in, most patients suddenly lose their strength or show an extremely unpleasant face, but he, perhaps already anticipating his own death, didn't even bat an eye. Around 2 o'clock that night, before dawn on December 5th, I, who had fallen asleep from nursing fatigue, was startled awake by his voice calling me. He was holding his pillow high with his thin hands, repeatedly turning it over and looking at it. He seemed to be very excited. When I peered in and asked what was wrong, he said, "My body hurts. Could you rub it a little?" I immediately started rubbing his back and waist, and although he usually said it hurt even with a light touch, that night he kept saying, "Harder, harder." I wondered what was wrong, and then I saw that his face had a good color and his eyes were shining brightly. On a night like this, a wonderful power wells up. I don't know where this power comes from. My limbs are jumping. "You, write the manuscript for me," he said. He was different from his usual self. I didn't realize that it was the last burst of life force burning up before death. "I will recover, I will recover, I will definitely recover." Those were his last words. I was in a panic, and while I was telling our friends the urgent news, I ran down the long corridor to the doctor's office, feeling a fierce anger towards something unknown, and muttering, "Idiot, idiot, don't die, don't die." Tears were streaming down my cheeks. Until the moment his breath stopped, his consciousness was pitifully clear. He was so lucid that you wouldn't think he would die a moment later. He said, "I'm so sorry for all the trouble I've caused, Mr. Kawabata," and to me, he said, "I'm sorry for everything, thank you," many times. When I said, "What are you talking about?" "Just get better soon," he replied, "Yes, I want to get better," and said he wanted to eat kuzu. When I made him some kuzu with kudzu powder, he ate it with relish and urged me to eat some too, so we ate together. Thinking back, that was our last meal together. When he had finished the kuzu, which was unusual for him, his consciousness suddenly vanished like smoke. And so, without any suffering, he peacefully drew his last breath at 5:35 in the morning, just as the night was beginning to break. When I quietly closed his no longer moving eyelids and said my final farewell, a sudden piercing chill ran through me. His death mask was truly beautiful. As I stared at his cold, dead face, I felt a sense of relief. As I stroked his thick hair and whispered, "Hojo, Hojo," something pure pushed up from my chest, and my eyes gradually began to cloud over. 2 weeks have passed since his death, and in that time, the wake, the collection of his ashes, and the memorial service have passed in a flurry. Now, as I organize his posthumous manuscripts and come across the outlines for several long novels, I feel deeply that I would have given 5 or 6 years of my own life to let him live. As I was reading his strangely remaining diary, a chapter like the following poem caught my eye. I feel that it gives a glimpse of his desolate loneliness and solitude, and the state of his suffering, so I ask for your permission to quote it here, and I want to pray for his soul from the bottom of my heart. Rough wall. White plaster smeared on the wall. Midnight. A horsefly is buzzing its wings. December, 1937. Sojinsha, Complete Works of Hojo Tamio, Volume 2.